welcome. We're about to start this next session, and our guest is Maroš Šefčovič, who is the Executive Vice President of the European Commission in Brussels and has held that position since 2019. He's a former ambassador on behalf of Slovakia. He has wide-ranging responsibilities as Vice President of the Commission. They include interinstitutional relations, but his letter of appointment also asked him to take charge of Brexit and to maintain, quote, a long-standing friendship and cooperation between the EU and the UK. So we're here to discuss Brexit as well as the future. So, Commissioner, is Brexit finished, done, completed?
I would say yes and no, because this is not only diplomatic, but in this case also very, very true answers. I honestly believe that, to put it in a nutshell, the big things are done. We created, I think, framework for a very good future relationship. We have withdrawal agreement, which was approved and ratified. We have trade and cooperation agreement, which offers the wide-ranging possibilities to cooperate in trade and in other areas. And now I think a couple of weeks ago we managed to finalize rather complicated negotiations on Windsor framework, which I hope are really taking care of all the unintended consequences of implementation of the protocol for, I would say, daily life of the people in Northern Ireland. So of course now what will be very important, how we would use that new frame, how we would implement those agreements, and how we would use their potential. I think we created very solid structures, different set of subcommittees working on, I would say, taking care of any issues linked with the withdrawal agreement or Windsor framework, but also we have very solid structure to put in place all the details of the trade and cooperation agreement, and we agreed with my counterparts, with Foreign Secretary James Cleverly or Secretary for Northern Ireland Chris Heaton-Harris, that we will use the structures fully, and that we will be doing much more talking than in the past to avoid any possible political problems in the future.
Okay, you mentioned Northern Ireland. I wonder if we could just take one step back historically. When Brexit was being negotiated with Michel Barnier, and then later you took the responsibility, the question of the customs union with Northern Ireland became a very tricky problem. And it seems to me that in economics there's only two options. Theresa May decided to have a customs union with keeping Northern Ireland in the UK customs union. Boris Johnson came in and said he would accept a customs union with a border on the Irish Sea. It would seem, though, that Boris Johnson as Prime Minister perhaps never intended to fully respect the customs union border across the Irish Sea. He said the rhetoric, but the practice was very different. Some might say that, therefore, Boris Johnson tricked Brussels and has got away with it, because the Windsor Agreement that you referred to is an unprecedented arrangement with provisions for easy access.
Indeed, it's absolutely unprecedented, as you rightly pointed out. We spent an enormous amount of time and our best negotiators to work on so-called backstop or the customs union solutions, but we have also seen that there was multiple attempts by then Prime Minister Theresa May to get it through the Westminster, and unfortunately it was not possible. And indeed, you are also right that it was express wish of Prime Minister Johnson who suggested that we should develop the new arrangement, and we started to work on protocol. And I think that the fact that we went that way that's just the best proof how seriously we took the importance of peace in Northern Ireland, that we've been respecting absolutely our commitment not to have a hard border between Ireland and Northern Ireland, and we've been kind of squaring the circle to look for the ways how to offer this new potential prosperity for Northern Ireland to create the access to the European single market for goods, and of course to respect the fact that Northern Ireland is an integral part of the United Kingdom.
Yes.
And the fact that it was not easy was proven that very soon after the withdrawal agreement was signed, we have some unilateral actions from the UK side, and of course we had to draw our conclusion at that time. But I'm very glad that we kind of overcame all these issues, and now I believe that we have really very, very solid solution in the form of Windsor framework, where we sorted out all the issues, all the problems linked with, I would say, daily application of it in Northern Ireland. And I spent over the last couple of days, 2 days in Dublin, 3 days in Belfast, because we've been marking the 25th anniversary of the Good Friday Belfast Agreement. And I think as a civil servant or the public official, very rarely you had such a, I would say, feeling of accomplishment, which we both shared, I have to say, with Chris Eaton Harris, that we did something right, that we did our utmost to preserve the peace, and at that time created new opportunity for increased prosperity in the Northern Ireland, and I would say on the island of Ireland, because of course if your neighbor is doing well, you usually do well as well. And the fact that we had such extensive sessions with business leaders in Northern Ireland, together with Joe Kennedy III, who is the special envoy of US for economic affairs for Northern Ireland, and that we both kind of clearly felt that there is huge appetite to invest in the unique place on this planet with access to both very important markets, is something which I hope would be fully used by the Northern Ireland and its people.
Okay, as you have indicated, you've devoted an enormous amount of time to understand the Northern Ireland context, visiting Dublin, London, Belfast repeatedly. I wonder though, whilst the so-called Windsor Agreement has been put into law, Northern Ireland continues to seem ungovernable. There is no government in Northern Ireland. So on paper, we have a resolution of Brexit called the Windsor Agreement. What happens in the next couple of years if there continue to be protests on the streets of Northern Ireland, an eruption of violence, no government, and the Protestant extremists more assertive than even now, the Democratic Unionist Party refusing to accept this legal agreement? Don't we have a difficult situation between what's on paper and the reality on the streets?
I think what is very important to say, and I think it was quite accepted in my discussions in Belfast, and I had the opportunity to have these informal talks with all political leaders when I was in Belfast. Of course, we are in very frequent contacts with my UK counterparts, and I think the fact that Europe is in its essence the project of peace, and that we've been supporting Good Friday Belfast Agreement from the day one, not only politically, but also financially, economically, and we've been always the friend who doesn't meddle into your affairs, but is there to help you when you need it, I think was hugely appreciated. And because we know how sensitive this issue is, we fully respect that it's for UK government and the people and of the Northern Ireland and their leaders to find the solution, how to put back be it executive but also parliamentary assembly up and running. I'm personally convinced that this would be the best solution for Northern Ireland because the elections happened already some times ago, and you need the functioning government to take care of daily business, from, I would say, healthcare down to the very important budgetary and other decisions which have to be taken. But it's the decision of the Northern Ireland people, Northern Ireland political parties, and we would be of assistance as much as we could be, and with the same energy and, I would say, positive attitude as we have been throughout the last years.
So if the British government come to you and say there are fires in Belfast, Belfast is on fire, the murder rate is increasing, does the Commission turn around and say, I'm sorry, we have the Windsor Agreement, we can't go any further?
I think that I would say, positive side and beauty of the Windsor Agreement is that this was the joint agreement. So these are the solutions we've been working, and I can tell you extremely hard, the both sides on, that we clearly been working with our European partners of creating new possibilities how to give the Northern Ireland representatives even bigger say in different kind of stakeholders fora which are being created, joint consultative working groups, special consultation process. As you know, we've been also working together on the storm on break, and I would say a lot of novelties which I think are clearly addressing some of the issues which are currently debated in the Northern Ireland. And of course, we always will be supportive of all the projects, all the support we can provide for the peace, for the best possible life and interaction between the communities, because I think that, you know, we still remember how was it before the Good Friday and Belfast Agreement. And
yes.
First place I visited when I for the first time visited Northern Ireland was Fleury Bridge. Fleury Bridge is a small border community, and I was kind of wondering why I'm invited to this place. And they showed me a little video. The Fleury Bridge 25 years ago was military ground. It was the place where the helicopter has been landing, where the paratroopers has been jumping off, and it was like a very tough environment, and you really saw that this is really a zone from which the military actions been conducted.
Okay.
After 25 years, there is a thriving business community. It's a business center. I was, of course, very proud that to a great extent funded by the European Union. And the only message I was getting from everyone I was talking to, please sort out the protocol, please find a solution, and make sure that all of you support us, because what we need is a peace, and we need to work on our economic prosperity, because this is the best recipe for any violence and for all those people who simply couldn't benefit until now from the economic developments in Northern Ireland.
Okay, I'm being reminded that we're short of time, so let's move on to a different kind of future. A change of government potentially in the UK may be interested in moving closer to the European Union. How easy might some of the steps towards a closer relationship than that provided in the Trade and Cooperation Agreement, how easy might those steps be, do you think?
I think that first and foremost we should really use fully the potential of trade and cooperation agreements. You would recall when the VIII agreement was approved, the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, was highlighting the areas where we would see the immediate interest from both sides to work together, like energy, like research and innovation. We started our discussions with the UK partners on the eventual rejoining of the biggest publicly funded research and innovation program, Horizon. And I think we presented very fair offer. We fully understand that you couldn't participate in the first 2 years, so we're not going to charge you for these first 2 years. But of course, for the rest of the time, you should contribute to the research and innovation program as any other third countries like Canadians, Israelis, or any others. We are discussing this issue, and I believe that the interest of the universities like yours, like all the researchers in the UK, would be properly transmitted also to London, that it's high time to sort out this issue. And there are many I would say challenges like this in the future. What I think it's important is that we would implement our agreements properly, and we would jointly agree what are the next areas where we should work. I would say caution here would be that even though we negotiated all these agreements with enormous diplomatic creativity, of course, even the best free trade agreement can never replace the membership in the EU, being part of the single market. So some of the, I would say, things which are now, unfortunately, reality, border checks, customs checks, I mean, they cannot get away just like that under, I would say, the current arrangement we have in the treaties.
Okay.
But I think we can do a lot if we talk to each other as eternal neighbors, strategic allies, and the biggest trading partners, which we are. And I think our cooperation on Ukraine and support for Ukraine just proving that we really need each other, that we know how to work very well together, and I think that's a huge potential for the future.
Okay, I think it's going to be the last question, picking up your point about the future. In terms of the European Union, do you think there have actually been some gains for the European Union? I imagine future historians might say, well, actually, after Brexit, the European Union became more united, re-engaged in a discussion about its long-term future. Suggestions about new treaties, institutional change came back on the agenda. Without the Brits, the European Union has actually done rather well. Surprisingly, the European Union stood united in the Brexit negotiations. As I say, the future debates on the future seem to be much stronger now. So has Brexit, in those ways, had good benefits for the European Union?
I think that you're right that over the last few years we lived too much history in the world, especially in Europe, COVID-19, war in Ukraine, Brexit. But I cannot think that the UK leaving the European Union was in any way beneficial for the European Union. We just simply lost one very important member state with whom we traditionally had very, very strong relationships. So I think that position, which was from the beginning, the position of the European Union, we regret this decision, but we respect it. And of course, we had to take our own conclusions, and the conclusion was absolute unity on all Brexit issues, but also throughout the COVID. And now you see that strong unity in supporting Ukraine. Indeed, it kind of galvanized the European project. But I believe that we could have done it also if the UK would be still at the European table.
Okay. Thank you very much, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you.